WWE and UFC are two of the biggest combat sports promotions in the world, and while they are now subsidiaries under the TKO banner, both UFC and WWE are two separate worlds. One is a real combat sports promotion, while the other focuses more on sports entertainment. Both promotions end up making a boatload of money every year, and performers across both companies benefit from this as well. Now, who gets to have a much larger bank account? A UFC fighter or a WWE superstar? One would assume that a UFC fighter makes more, considering MMA is as real as it gets, but that's not the case. If I told you what a WWE performer makes in comparison to a UFC fighter, you'd end up calling the UFC performer poor. More WWE superstars make millions in a year in comparison to UFC fighters. So today, let's take a look at the brutal truth about WWE and UFC performers' pay. Let's get right into it. On the surface, it might look as if the business models of both WWE and UFC are similar, but that's not the case. They are totally different. When it comes to the biggest wrestling promotion in the world, WWE has always relied on the sports entertainment aspect of grabbing the attention of its viewers. It's no secret that over 90% of the fan base is aware that the shows are largely scripted. However, the way WWE presents its performers as some of the biggest superstars in the entire world through creative storylines, that's how WWE is able to bring in those sweet green bucks. WWE generates revenue through different ways. The television rights fees are the obvious one, considering the company gets paid a lot for Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. WWE's partnership with Netflix is worth a staggering $5 billion over the course of 10 years, while SmackDown's deal with NBC Universal is worth $1.4 billion over 5 years. Apart from the television shows, PLEs have always been a major source of revenue for WWE. Fans purchasing major events via pay-per-views used to be a way that generated a lot of money for the company, but ever since WWE launched the WWE Network and later moved over to Peacock, subscription fees have been doing the trick for the company. Merchandising has always been a great source of revenue for pro wrestling companies, and WWE has always capitalized on unique ways to market its performers. Superstars like John Cena, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk have benefited greatly by receiving their share of royalties from merchandise sales. If you have been noticing the god-awful amount of branding across the ring mat, LED boards, and even on the tables, then you must have realized that WWE is cashing in on its partnerships with multiple sponsors. It is also worth noting that WWE's partnership with Slim Jim is one of the biggest sponsorship deals in pro wrestling history. Fans were furious over the fact that WWE is hosting WrestleMania in Las Vegas for the second year in a row in 2025, after having announced a few months ago that the next Mania was going to take place in New Orleans. The reason for the change? WWE made an exorbitant amount of money with this year's Mania in Las Vegas. The company shattered records with Mania 41 in terms of viewership, merchandise, and sponsorship, which is why they are heading back to Vegas next year. WWE is also receiving over $7 million as a site fee for this year's SummerSlam. This is why the company has been focusing more on generating revenue as of late. UFC, on the other hand, is in an exclusive media rights deal with ESPN, which was extended from 2023 through 2025 for $1.5 billion. It generates much of its revenue from pay-per-view sales. ESPN Plus is the company's exclusive US distributor. With each pay-per-view costing around $80, UFC holds more than 10 events in a year. Unlike WWE, UFC has to build those pay-per-views with fights that fans would be willing to pay to see. With WWE streaming its shows on Peacock and Netflix, UFC also offers a streaming subscription named UFC Fight Pass, which offers archived fights and smaller live events. UFC holds several events in a year. While the attendance might not be on the level of a major WWE show, ticket prices are through the roof for a UFC show most of the time. Prices are extremely high for pay-per-views that feature marquee fights. UFC 306, which took place at the Sphere, had an attendance of 16,000 fans, and the show set the record for the biggest gate in the company's history, as it generated almost $22 million. With there not being that many UFC events in a year, the company is able to charge premium pricing for its biggest events. UFC has a different take on how it generates revenue from its merchandising. The company prefers partnerships with sportswear brands. UFC partnered up with Venom, which is responsible for making the fight kit and apparel for all the fighters. It also produces UFC-branded merchandise for the fans. UFC merchandise is limited in comparison to WWE. Collectibles like signed posters and memorabilia are something that's popular among the UFC fan base. UFC also earns a lot from its sponsors. Monster Energy has been one of the biggest and longest-standing sponsors of UFC. Their logo is often seen on the octagon canvas and fighter uniforms. Just like Monster Energy, several other brands have also benefited with their partnership with UFC. It's safe to say that both WWE and UFC make a lot in a year. However, the difference between what a WWE superstar gets paid in comparison to a UFC fighter is mind-boggling. UFC fighters are paid per fight, and it is based on the tier they are in. The amount of times a fighter gets to step inside the octagon is based on wins and popularity. Fighters in the lowest tier are paid anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000 per fight. The tier above that includes fighters who have won several fights and have a growing fan base. They are paid between $80,000 and $250,000 per fight. The highest tier includes fighters who are champions and the top attraction of the sport. They are paid between $300,000 and $5 million. Some of the highest paid UFC fighters, as of this moment, include Alex Pereira, Dricus du Plessis, Sean Strickland, and Bilal Muhammad, all earning 7 to 8 figures. However, not every UFC fighter is lucky enough to see those paydays, as only the top ticket sellers make millions of dollars. Even Sean Strickland addressed how UFC poorly pays its fighters. UFC pay is utter garbage, lol. They're signing guys at 10K, that should be criminal. When it comes to what a WWE superstar gets paid, it's a whole different story. WWE performers sign contracts that guarantee them a yearly salary. Here's where things get interesting. An NXT performer is paid somewhere between $50,000 and $200,000. When the NXT performer is moved up to the main roster, the performer ends up making more than $250,000 as a base salary. And when you factor in the merchandise and bonus checks from major events, the final amount ends up skyrocketing. Wrestlers are paid a percentage of merchandise sales, and it can be a lot if their merchandise performs well. Stone Cold Steve Austin has made millions because of his iconic Austin 316 t-shirt, and that shirt continues to do well. John Cena, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns have made a fortune from merchandise sales. WWE performers are on the road every week, and the positive side to this is that they get paid even if they are out with an injury. The same cannot be said for a UFC fighter. While UFC covers the medical expenses for injuries that happen during a fight, the company doesn't provide long-term health insurance to its fighters. On top of all this, UFC fighters aren't allowed to fight for any other promotion or even compete in other combat sports while they're under contract with UFC. This has been a major controversy, as UFC claims that its fighters are considered independent contractors. UFC has also been called out for restricting its fighters' sponsorship opportunities outside of the company. Unlike the UFC, WWE performers have been allowed to appear in other promotions like Pro Wrestling Noah, Marigold, and TNA ever since the new administration came into place. More WWE performers are paid six-figure salaries than the UFC fighters. As a matter of fact, more WWE performers make more than $1 million than the UFC fighters. Some of the highest paid WWE performers include Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, and Seth Rollins. While the biggest UFC fighter may make more than the biggest WWE superstar, it's abundantly clear that more WWE superstars get paid handsomely than most UFC fighters, and this is a debate that will continue for years to come. So, what do you guys think? Do you think more UFC fighters deserve to get paid better? Let us know in the comments below, and you might also want to check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Make sure to subscribe for more.